Something that I've been thinking about a lot recently is what different people live their lives for. I see people walking around, working, spending time with friends and family, creating, partying, traveling, and I wonder, what is the meaning of this person's life? Viktor Frankl, a psychologist and Holocaust survivor who went on to create logotherapy, the therapy that works based on creating meaning of your life, claimed that there are 3 ways that humans find meaning. The first is by experiencing something, like a beautiful song, a pretty sunset, a tasty piece of food. The second is by creating something, such as the career you do, a painting or a work of art. Or number 3, by overcoming hardship, such as surviving the Holocaust like he did, or simply dealing with the traffic jam, waiting out a turbulent plane flight. Hi, I'm Anna. I'm a psychologist in training. On this channel, we talk about real-life applications to psychology, so go ahead and hit like and subscribe if you'd like to see more. In this video, I hope to get you a little closer to figuring out the meaning of your life, and I know that is quite an ambitious task. To start, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge 2 things. The first one is that not everyone has the same meaning of life, and that's what this whole video is about. And the second one is that most people live for multiple reasons, not just one singular thing. So although I'm going to be breaking down different categories or reasons why people live their life, keep in mind that while you may have one that you relate to the most, it's likely a combination of the following that guides the reasons you live. And also, not everyone is going to have the exactly same profile of what is important to them as you. And so when this video is done, I'd love to hear, which of the categories you most related to from this video. Before we get started, I'd like to suggest 2 exercises to help you figure out the meaning of your life. Number 1, if you had $1 million every year for the rest of your life, what would you do with your time? So I want you to write this down in great detail because we're going to come back to it in a moment. Some people might say they'd stop working, simply relax by the pool every day. Some people might travel. Some people might donate it all to charity. Some people might keep working. For example, if I had $1 million every year for the rest of my life, I would probably travel, write, and donate the rest. My partner, when I asked him this question, he said he would probably just make music. And I thought this was interesting. I said I would write. He said he would make music. We both have different occupations that we've chosen. I think this question really gets to the bottom of what is your true passion? What would you do if you had no limits, no obstacles, no financial security to take care of? What is the thing you would do if you had absolutely no restrictions and responsibilities? The second exercise is, what would you do if you knew you only had a week or a month to live? So I was reading The Untethered Soul, which is an okay book. I liked some parts, disliked others. I was reading it actually while I had COVID. And so I had a high fever and I was a little scared. I know some people have very mild COVID these days. That was not really the case for me. I was due for a booster, to be honest. And so the last chapter in The Untethered Soul is on contemplating death and the importance of waking up every morning and asking yourself, what do I want to do today given that death is inevitable? And kind of imagining like this week were your last. And I realized that in the past I had always said, well, I would want to write and just write and write and write so that I can publish that after I'm gone. And also I would want to travel to see the parts of the world that I didn't get a chance to see yet. But I realized in that moment that if I were actually sick or fatigued in my last days on Earth, I probably wouldn't want to write or create. I would probably just want to rest, relax, and spend time with loved ones. So I think these 2 questions sort of get at slightly different meanings of your life, or maybe they're the same for you, but I think it's a good way of exploring 2 different ways of answering the same question, which is ultimately, what do you live for? So now let's talk about a bunch of different ways that people find meaning in life, and I want you to take the notes from those last 2 questions that I asked you to see which categories you seem to fit most into. And like I said, it's likely going to be a number of them, not just one. Meanings of life that involve experiencing something. A big one here is mindfulness, of the good and the bad, of honoring the richness of all life experiences, of simply going with the flow and fully experiencing all that there is, joy, pain, love, hatred, everything. I think a lot of highly spiritual individuals, such as Buddhist monks, priests, have this way of living, and it's very simple because It's very sustainable. It requires very little in order for you to do it. You don't need to know that all of life is going to go smooth or that happiness is ahead of you, only that life is a journey no matter what, and that all of it is worth experiencing. In my opinion, living for mindfulness is the most sustainable meaning of life, and one that I should prioritize a lot more, to be honest. Then there's also beauty or aesthetics. This one goes hand in hand with mindfulness because it requires immersion in the five senses, enjoying the visual beauty around yourself, auditory, tactile, all of it. It requires enjoying nature's beauty, architectural beauty, human beauty. This could look like being invested in fashion, makeup, interior design, fine cuisine, event planning, travel. People who value making themselves and their surroundings beautiful using all five senses, who value being surrounded by other people and places who share this value too, are people who live for beauty, live for aesthetics. And this is definitely one of my core values as well. I personally love putting on makeup, wearing expressive clothes, decorating every room in my home in a very specific style, keeping my home tidy, going to places with gorgeous scenery and architecture, eating beautiful food, drinking beautiful drinks, being inspired by the beauty of other women in the world around me. I know some people would probably argue this is a more superficial, less sustainable meaning of life, but honestly, I think you can find beauty in anything. I find beauty even in just walking down the street. Sometimes I find myself taking notes of things to write. Another value is novelty. So this is things like travel, learning new information, changing yourself, moving from place to place, meeting new people. I think people that take part in like polyamory are also very into novelty. Living for novelty means living for whatever involves experiencing something new and different. To an extent, I think this is kind of a low-level value for myself as well, because I do value going to new places and learning new information. Then there's pleasure. This is what a lot of hedonists live by. This is again related to the five senses and also to beauty, I think, but in my opinion, instead of simply focusing on what is beautiful, it's about what feels really good and pleasurable in a more heightened way. Not just mindfully enjoying beauty, but actually feeling very intense pleasure and joy. People who live for pleasure tend to enjoy decadent food and drink, mind-altering substances, or alternatively, if they find that they don't like the hangovers or the consequences associated with such substances, sobriety could be a way of maintaining pleasure as well. They value satisfying their temporary cravings, sensuality, etc. Then there are people who value relaxation and rest. This is, in my opinion, a slightly more low-energy version of pleasure. It's more like contentment. It's not about creating a work of art or feeling intense pleasure, but rather low-intensity pleasure, like the feeling of simply rocking on a hammock or basking in a soft field of grass. It's more related to mindfulness too, I think. These people enjoy taking it slow in their free time, getting lots of sleep, watching TV, maybe reading, listening to music, going with the flow, laid back, chilling with loved ones. They're people who live to live rather than to work. You know, although I am a person who is very, very productive and constantly wants to create things, I do think rest and relaxation is also very important to me. I've always needed a lot of free time to feel like I'm living, which is why grad school has been such a deviation from that, and why a 40-hour work week to me has always seemed very excessive. And I know, there are other cultures that are even more about work than American culture, but I've always related more to the European mindset, partly because I am European. I know that in my future, I'm really going to value having flexible work hours and being able to travel and raise a family and focus on what I truly love, which is writing. And, we'll see how that works out. I'm also a person that in past years has really enjoyed getting enough sleep. I really don't have a good time. I don't enjoy the next day if I've stayed up late because I'm not able to sleep in. And so when people say like, you're gonna regret this, you should come out, stay out later, I just don't see the appeal because I value the ability to rest so much. And this is like the polar opposite from what I used to be like in college. So I think it goes to show that people can really, really change in their values over time. Love and connection is also a really big reason why people live. You know, giving and receiving love, being kind to others, improving your life, spending time with loved ones. I think this is a really big one for extroverts who sort of need that energy from other people in order to feel refreshed. It's also big for people who are altruists, philanthropists, who really want to improve the lives of others. This one's also definitely important to me, even though I'm about as introverted as they come. I've often thought that if I only had one day to live, I'd want to focus on giving as much love as possible to the people around me. Meanings of life that involve creating something. A big one here is creativity or art, which I think sort of go under the same category. So this is things like painting, drawing, sculpting, fashion, whatever that falls under the visual arts category, making music, singing, playing an instrument, so you know, the auditory arts, writing, poetry, journalism. It could be physically building or designing something, such as a canoe, a house. It could be creating content that others can consume, such as YouTube videos, a newspaper article. This is related to beauty, but it goes a little bit beyond that. It transcends it into, you're not just enjoying the natural beauty of the earth we inhabit and the people on it, you're actually transmuting that beauty into a work of art. This is why travel really heavily inspires me to write, because it gives me something to describe, it gives me ideas, it triggers my imagination. So this one is huge for me, if not number one on my list. And then there's also achievement and success. It's creating value for yourself in your occupation, making money for your company, for yourself, for your family, deconstructing and rebuilding your own strengths and weaknesses. This could be anything. It could be creating a more assertive personality if you're a little bit passive. It could be preparing for an interview. It could be working on your defensiveness in therapy. It could be getting a specific body type, achieving something that you want, a goal that you aim to change yourself towards. This one is also pretty important to me. I love adapting and growing and changing and achieving new things. It's not as important to me as the others, I don't think, but it's definitely something that refreshes and energizes me. Meanings of life that involve overcoming hardship. I think achievement and having a growth mindset also falls under this category. So the idea of always improving yourself, always doing better, always trying to attain a higher goal. I also put it under this category because all growth is the result of pain. I'm sure you've heard the expression, no pain, no gain. In order for your muscles to grow, for example, you need to create these small micro tears in them. It's the same with more abstract growth as well. You need to go through the pain of emotional, mental suffering in order to see the outcome that you want. This is why therapists say that therapy is not always supposed to be fun. It's not always supposed to leave you feeling better than you came in, because it's hard work in order to meet your mental goals. Sometimes it requires really plunging into the darkness. And then another meaning of life in this category is resilience, stoicism, radical acceptance, toughness. I think these are all sort of related. They're all sort of the concept behind Taoism, DBT, Stoic philosophy, a lot of Eastern European attitudes on life, Viktor Frankl's view on hardship as well. Pain is unavoidable, and withstanding it and resisting it only turns that pain into suffering. And so it can be a huge meaning of life to dedicate yourself to not resisting pain, to simply withstanding it, being resilient, being strong in the face of adversity. I think this is generally a really important value for people who are going through a really difficult period or have just been dealt a really shitty hand. People like single moms living in poverty, people being trafficked, people with trauma or mental illness, people with chronic pain. Generally anyone that has had to go through very difficult things has had to, in a way, find meaning in that pain in order to surmount it. And lastly, meanings of life that may be psychologically unhealthy and harmful to others. I think a big one here is external validation or getting the approval of other people. The reason for this is that it cannot be guaranteed. It's not feasible long term. It's not sustainable. It leads to moving through life in a very fragile and defensive manner. You're bound to have somebody that doesn't approve of you, that doesn't validate you. And when that happens, it's almost like they're taking away your meaning in life. Hoarding wealth, being as rich as humanly possible, or simply anything related to reaching an arbitrary number, whether it's your salary, your weight, your body count, any sort of numerical goal that you have in mind, beyond just having a growth mindset and wanting to achieve greater things. When you set such an arbitrary number on a human experience, it kind of reduces the joy out of living. You can't quantify the meaning of life like that. It's quite dangerous and compulsive in my opinion. And also manipulating others or trying to gain power over other people. People that are abusive do this, con artists do this, corrupt politicians do it. It's arguably immoral and usually blows up in people's faces. And so I would argue that is not a very healthy or kind way to live your life either. So I want to ask you, what is the meaning of your life? Which 1, 2, 3 of the aforementioned reasons guide your life? I'd love to know the reason why you move through the world. And if you want to further explore this in therapy, ACT is a really great way to discover your values. It's acceptance and commitment-based therapy. So trying to find an ACT therapist could definitely be an option for you. Just wanted to put that out there. Hope you have a great day. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, leave a comment if you feel comfortable doing so, and I'll see you soon.